I'm here because I am a roaring lion crying out righteousness. Cassidy Hutchinson, the young woman who testified before the committee, January 6th committee, she was the chief of staff, not chief of staff, but the chief of staff. Well, Mark Meadows, she worked for Mark Meadows as the chief of staff for Donald John Tribulation Trump. And she was his secretary, chief of his group. And she's a very young woman, and she testified before the January 6th committee. Everybody was spellbound by the truth she was telling, because, you know, most of the people that was summoned or that was sent a summons or subpoenaed to come to testify, most didn't come. People like Jim Jordan, for instance. And the ones that did come mostly lied. But she was on Rachel Maddow's show last night, and because she just released a new book. And so, I'm going to let you listen to a little bit about what she said to Rachel Maddow. I think this woman, in my opinion, is an interesting woman. I'm not sure where to come down in terms of who she is. I will say this: she's got courage. I don't know if I had the kind of courage or integrity at 24 years old, 25 years old, that she expressed going back a year or so ago. And even now, she's only 27. She's written a book. She's now a millionaire. I'm not saying that to besmirch her or in any ways to drive anybody away from affection for her. And she's going to have a pretty promising future. But I'm not sure exactly what to make of her. I'm not here to endorse her. Because I'm trying to figure out exactly what's going on with her. I can say that she's a very courageous woman. She's very well spoken. She's extremely poised. And she's far above her years at the age she's at now. But she was on last night. She gave her first interview to Rachel Maddow. Rachel Maddow is no favorite of mine. I don't know if Rachel Maddow even believes in the Bible. She may be like that other guy who's late night with Bill Maher. You know him, Bill Maher? He don't even believe in God. So I don't know what these, but Rachel Maddow has a pretty big late night show. And so, but I think that, okay, her courage just caught my attention, all right? And she done spilled the beans on Mark Meadows, Tribulation Trump eating a hamburger and drinking a Coca-Cola while the riot was going on, while there was the assault on the Temple of Democracy, crying out, hang Mike Pence. In fact, she said last night, or someone said last night on a broadcast, one of the broadcasts from MSNBC, that Trump was saying hang Mike Pence too. When they were saying Trump was hearing on television, the news report was coming into the White House, they're in the dining room, Trump was sitting there eating a hamburger, and they were saying, hang Pence. And somebody said, Trump stood up and said, hang him too. Hang Pence. So we'll see what this. I'll talk more about Trump in just a moment. Got a lot of things to try to cover today. Let's just what Rachel Maddow and Cassidy Hutchinson had to say last night.
There's also a couple of instances involving Congressman Matt Gaetz. I will omit most of the context here, but I'll tell you the lines that have kept me up and uncomfortable. He chuckled and brushed his thumb across my chin. Has anyone ever told you you're a national treasure? You describe a night at Camp David when he was leaning against the door frame while somebody answered the door to another cabin. Matt straightened his posture when Kevin McCarthy asked him what he wanted. He explained he had seen my golf cart parked outside and thought this was my cabin. Embarrassed, I got up and asked Mr. Gaetz what he needed. He explained that he was lost and asked me to escort him to his cabin. I told him to proceed around the Circle Drive. All the cabins are clearly marked. It's impossible to get lost. He asked me one more time to leave with him. Kevin McCarthy then said, quote, "Get a life, Matt," and shut the door. Now, Mr. Gaetz, we asked him for comment on these allegations tonight. He told us, "I don't remember either of these events. And based on Cassidy's prior false statements, I doubt they occurred. I did date Cassidy for a few weeks when we were both single years."
Oh, you know this guy, Matt Gaetz. You know who he looks like? Remember the Addams Family? Remember the little boy who walked around in short pants all the time? That's who Matt Gaetz. That's what Matt Gaetz looked like grown up, that little boy in the Addams Family. Anyway, go ahead, Miss Angela.
Ago, we parted amicably and remained friends thereafter, even during President Trump's post-presidency. And then he goes on to make other unrelated claims. I'm sorry to ask you if you want to respond to that, but I'm going to ask you if you want to respond.
I would love to respond to that, Rachel,
Okay.
so thank you for giving me the option.
Yeah.
I will give Matt credit in his part of his statement that we did have an amicable working relationship, and we were good friends at points. Matt Gaetz, in my opinion, is somebody that I personally do not hold in high regards in terms of trust, and I do not think that Matt Gaetz has the best track record for relationships and condoning his relationships how he thinks that they might be defined. I will say on behalf of myself, I never dated Matt Gaetz. I have much higher standards in men, and
Wow.
Matt frankly, is a very
God.
unserious politician.
I mean, did she shoot him down or what? I mean, it's like, normally, Matt Gaetz is saying he dated her, So normally a woman would say, no, we never had dated. That's a normal woman would say, no, we never dated. And that would be the end of it. This woman stepped back and wound up. She stepped back and set the stage, checked the wind for which way the wind is blowing, licked her finger, poised herself, dug her heels in, and then she dropped the bomb on him. I never dated anybody like him. My standard is higher than him. I mean, the way this woman shot that man down will live in infamy if that's the right way to approach. I mean, my goodness, Matt Gaetz ought to go somewhere and hide. I mean, talking about being shot down. I listened to half an hour of this woman last night on Rachel Maddow, and I think she said a lot of interesting things that I already knew and was not surprised to hear. But this one takes the cake. The way she backed up and backslapped and be-slapped Matt Gaetz will live forever. Matt Gaetz, you ought to go hide yourself, boy. Besides, anyway, go ahead, Ms. India. Let's see the rest of this.
And we see that today with the ruckus that he is causing on Capitol Hill with the spending negotiations. And I don't really have much else to say to somebody that is more concerned about a soundbite than actually passing legislation.
Mr. Giuliani's remark in response to your allegation about him, which was graphic and gross, was that this was a disgusting lie against him.
Grabbed her. I'm not sure exactly how she worked out the dynamics about that. Anyway, go ahead and say it, because old man Giuliani was grabbing her. That's what she said.
Stand by that statement despite his pushback?
I stand by my statement and what I described in the book, and I agree that it was gross.
Cassidy Hutchinson, you have been through a lot, particularly as a very young woman who had to do a lot of this on her own. The record that you've given us is much, much, much more complete than anybody else could have given us, and it took a lot of bravery to get there. This has been a hard time in your life, but you've done a service to your country, and I hope that good things happen for you.
All right, so there you have it. I think the woman is, she's quite poised. And when she testified nearly a year and a half ago now before the January 6th committee, I was intrigued and amazed at her posture and at her ability to really step out and be against Trump, tell the truth on Trump. She said that somebody told her that Trump said, I want to go to the Capitol. Well, I want to be a part. And so the driver and the security said, Mr. Trump, we don't have assets, meaning we don't have protection and it's not safe for us to go to the Capitol. We have to go back to the West Wing. So that Trump reached across the back of the seat and tried to grab the steering wheel and said, I forget the name of the guy. She said, Mr. Trump, take your cotton picking hand. Then she said, Mr. Trump, that's what the fellow said, take your cotton picking hands off the steering wheel. Oh, man, I was laughing when she said that. That Trump was grabbing for the steering wheel. And she said she said a lot of things about Trump. And she also said that after she made that testimony, she had to go into hiding. And she moved from Washington down to Atlanta. She didn't have any money. She was 2 months behind on her rent. And but she ain't behind on her rent no more. That book ain't enough for gonna sell. People gonna buy that book, I can tell you that.